Hey guys, I'm Andy and this is my better half, Mary Hannah, and behind us is Tango, our little house on wheels. Today is the day where we're finally going to do a walk around video and show you. Basically, it's gone from stock Land Rover into our little camper van conversion.
Yeah. Before we get into it, let's rewind real quick. We bought our Defender online, sight unseen, when we were on our Pan American trip. We finished off the Pan American and flew to the UK to build it out. 4 months later, in March of 2020, we shipped it to South Africa. Sadly, our Africa trip was canceled because of COVID-19. Instead, we headed to the Arctic Circle. It was there in freezing temperatures that we decided to convert our Defender into a camper. We designed it in CAD, had the cabinetry CNC'd, and made countless other upgrades to convert our Defender into what we believe is our ultimate setup for our current style of travel. After months of long days in the shop, we finally set off on our UK to Turkey trip and finally got to put it to the test. So we've been on the road for 3 months now. There's some things that we've learned on the road, of little modifications that we've made, some things that we're still considering making, so we'll talk through those as well. It might be a long video. And yeah, Andy's going to talk through the external modifications. I'll show you guys around the inside, both on the cockpit side and the back of the camper van, and let us know if you guys have any questions.
Let's get into it. Right, so I'll start you off from the front of the vehicle. Everything we've put on Tango is there for a purpose. None of it's been like, oh, it looks cool, so we'll just bang it on. We've always had a bit of theory in mind for why we want it. So ARB deluxe bumper. When we first came back from South America in our old vehicle, which had an ARB deluxe bumper as well, the idea was to ship to Africa, and obviously there's a lot of wildlife out there and you're in remote areas. So should an impala or whatever animal hit the radiator out in the heat there, it's going to, write you off basically and give you a bit of a hard time. So that's why we went with the deluxe bumper. The light force lights, you can see we've got them down on the bumper and we've got 4 up top. We do try not to drive at night as much as we can, especially in some of the dodgier countries. But for instance, when we were in the Arctic and you've got 4 hours of daylight in the winter, we were pretty much living on these every day. So the light force lights were really good. The one winch, so we've got the 9.5 XPS, so that's like integrated into the ARB bumper. We haven't used it that many times for ourselves. Mainly we've ended up recovering other people, but because we are solo travellers, we're not travelling in convoy and stuff most of the time. It's just, gives you that warm fuzzy feeling that if something does happen, it's just another way of getting out. Checker plate all over. Basically, we've got storage boxes up top, so nearly every other day we're climbing up and down here. So instead of the Puma bonnet, because it's got the raised hump in it, it'd get dinted straight away. So a checker plate just to protect it. All the stock lights have been changed out for LEDs. Before you go and do like big spotlights and all that, I would suggest just changing your standard headlights for LEDs. That totally changes. Like the stock Defender ones are like having a couple of candles there, so that were a big upgrade. The only downside to these, if you are going to drive in Alaska or in the Arctic Circle or wherever, LED lights don't get warm, so if you are going to drive somewhere like that, get ones with the heating element in it, so that'll melt the snow off. Up top, we've got a front runner roof rack. We had a front runner rack on our old vehicle and it worked perfect, so we stuck with the same brand, which is holding our Pelican box, which is the same Pelican box that we use through Central and South America. That worked faultlessly, so again, we kept that. In there, we've got things like backpacks, maybe some extra footwear, or things that we don't really use that much, and generally it's not that expensive. We got a wolf box on the other side, a front runner wolf box. That's got a few little spare parts like prop shaft U-joints and some grease and some bits and bobs. This is a front runner mount for the Max Tracks, and these are on little quick release. It does make it a lot easier. The easier things are to get, the more likely you're just going to use them. So that's been really nice, changing to these little brackets. We've got our spade mount up here, which is another front runner part, so it means you can just bolt it straight on there, so it's easy. always carry a spade if you don't carry anything else, because that's probably going to save you one day. One of the best upgrades that we've done on the 2.0 build is changing out our old awning, which is like it takes 2 people to get it out. You roll it out, put the legs down, to the Alucab shadow awning. Over the last 3 months in Europe, there's been heat waves and it's just been red hot from day one of this trip, and we've had this out every single day since we've had it. On each side of the Defender, so either side and at the rear, we've got some work lights as well, so it's just like a little light force light which puts out a nice, especially when you're pulling up to a campsite in the dark, it's nice to just get an all-round view. We've got the front runner gull wing, which we had this before but with a cupboard behind it, but now it just goes into the area, and then we've got a bit of a cut through here so we can still get to some spices and what have you for when we're cooking outside. Another addition from Safari Equip is this storage locker, which our friends at Phoenix Refinish colour coded it perfectly to Tango, which we were buzzing about. This is where we keep our tools and recovery equipment, so it's just another place where we're utilising every bit of space we can. But also this is things that probably would have been up on the roof rack, and it's keeping it the weight as low down as possible, which all helps. Around the back we've got a front runner wolf box up top that holds our water purifying system. I'll get that system out because it's really cool, and I'll show you that at the end of the video. We've got our front runner table up here, which is on a little sliding rack, so you just slide that in and out as you need it. We had that on our old build and it worked faultlessly, so again we just stuck with what we knew. Front runner steps here, this just ratchet straps onto your spare wheel, so it's just a generic thing, it's not Land Rover specific. Same with the front runner spare wheel barbecue, so that literally just pulls off, and then you've got a barbecue there, which we don't use this so much, but when we have a group of people, that's when we tend to use it more because it's a nice big surface. The good old trasheroo, this has gone strong-ish. It's starting to fall apart now because it's seen some times over the last 5 years. So we will need to replace this at some point, but that's like an unsung hero. We use it every single day. It's got our front runner barbecue inside it, as well as obviously all the trash goes in there, and on the outside hand sanitizers and that sort of thing that you just want to get to easily. The spare wheel is on a swing away as well, just to add a bit more strength. Onto the driver's side, up top we've got a front runner high lift jack bracket. That's another thing that just bolts straight to the roof rack. We are thinking about taking that down because we want to try and get rid of as much weight from up top as we can. We've got rock sliders. Rock sliders are obviously really good for protection and what have you, but a lot of time we've been using it just to get up and down. Big upgrade, and it's just been an absolute dream on the road, is having an external shower. Before we just had a jerry can, so we just have to go to either a campsite or a hotel every so often. This is pressurized from a Dometic water pump. This is on a mixer valve as well, so eventually, right now we don't have it, but eventually we'll have hot water, and then we can just mix this hot water so we can get the perfect temperature too. Underneath we've got a 65 litre stainless steel water tank, and that's from a company called Safari Equip in West Yorkshire, England. This is the fill point. So on the road a lot of petrol stations have water and what have you, but if not, we can fill up from our filtration system. Tyre choice, I've been using BF Goodrich tyres since I had my first Defender in 2009. So, and we used these on our last trip through Central and South America, which we put 25,000 pretty hard miles on, and they were absolutely faultless. We used these up in the Arctic Circle, so then we've used them again for this trip. So it'd take a lot for us to be persuaded to move from this tyre brand. So this is the BF Goodrich All-Terrain KO2. Also with the tyre choice, instead of going with like big wheels, we've stayed with a 235 wide by 85 on a 16-inch standard Land Rover heavy duty steel wheel. Another thing that probably 99% of you out there who's got Overland vehicles is you play with the suspension. My theory on that is I didn't want to mess around with the geometry and what have you and changing all different things. So we've kept standard Land Rover heavy duty suspension. And now that we've added the weight, it's riding pretty perfect. Probably the best Defender I've ever rode in. Another upgrade, so basically this section here is a cavity, and on the Defender you can get I think it's 44 litres of extra diesel there. So that adds probably, I don't know, we've got a range now of, what would you say, Mitch, about nearly 600 miles on good roads. So that's a really nice thing to have, and on a touring vehicle I feel like that's almost a must-have.
All right, y'all, let's get to the good stuff. What makes Tango 2.0 Tango 2.0? All the exterior stuff is cool, but it's really the camper conversion. As you can see, we've completely built out the Defender. Before, we just had a drawer system back here and a sleeping platform, and then boxes and stuff like that. But on our Arctic trip, we were sitting in the back. It was minus 20 something degrees, and we were absolutely freezing trying to make pot noodles and make a cup of tea in our sleeping bags. And that was the moment that we decided, okay, there's probably a better way, especially if we're going to be in the Defender for the long term. So that's when the ideas behind Tango 2.0 really started. And today I'll kind of talk you guys through everything that we've done on the build and why we made the decisions, the storage side of things. Before we get inside, we'll start on the back. So we've got a window guard from Devon 4x4. And basically the reason that we put it on is a lot of people do it for security reasons. Ours was more so we could actually mount stuff and utilize this space back here. So relatively simple. We've got a fire extinguisher always handy just in case. Hopefully we'll never need it. A med kit, again, fingers crossed we never need it, but it's here and handy. Bottle opener, pretty essential. Our trusty fold down table, we've had this thing for 3 years now, and you really can't beat it. When we were designing this, we did some measurements wrong and we weren't going to be able to have this, so we ended up completely going back to the drawing board, taking everything out to reconfigure the cabinetry so then we could fit the drop down table. So if that's any indication of how much we like this thing, basically we can cook inside, we can cook on this, or we can cook on our front runner table from up here. So we have 3 different areas so we don't feel like we're confined to cooking inside. All right, y'all, let's go inside. Couple of things that were super important for us: the ability to sleep in the back if we didn't pop the roof down. And then we were debating between either bringing this up higher so we had more storage space, which is obviously crucial in such a tiny little space that you're calling home, or keeping it low so we could then still function and use this space even when the roof isn't popped. We obviously went with the second option, and so far, so good. I'm so glad we did. It's been awesome to be able to come back here and work or make lunch or whatever, even if the roof isn't popped. But this thing really comes into its own when the roof is up, so I think it's time to pop that, and we'll give you a full walk around of how everything's laid out and stuff from there. It's a pretty simple setup. You just unclip the 2 back latches and then push it all the way up. There's like helper struts on the back, and then there's 2 poles that once it's actually pushed up, you just pop those in and your camp is set up, which is pretty crazy. This is hands down been one of the biggest changes to the Defender and has allowed us to make the camper exactly the way that we've wanted it and really transform the Defender into our dream setup. So as you can see, the roof is now popped, which gives us way more room. Andy can stand in the back without any problem. Obviously, I can even jump in here. And in the back, I think it's around 11 feet, which is obviously just insane. I already talked through the reason for the height, but I wanted to show you guys, because this is kind of a cool feature. This folds out into a bed. We have 2 different platform areas that slide. So if one person was sitting here and wanted to have like a little day bed, they can do that. Or the same goes for this section as well. Say I'm working and Andy's lounging. He can pull this out into a day bed, which is awesome. And then of course we could pull both of them out and use it for a bed if we needed to. The upholstery side of things was relatively simple. We ended up getting the foam from an online website. I think it's called Foam Direct, and you go in and put in your measurements, and then they cut it and mail it out to you. So these were already pre-cut to the exact dimensions that we needed. And then on the fabric side, Andy comes from Yorkshire. He's a proud Yorkshireman. And we really wanted to find something that came from the area because it's known for its wool. That's kind of the history of the area and all of that. So without getting too far into it, that's why we really wanted to find a local company for it. So there's a company called Joshua Ellis. that does the fabric for suits around the world and all of like Daniel Craig and all these different celebrities and stuff. But in their group, they also have a company called Abbotsford Textiles, which is the company that we went with, and they do more of commercial products. So this wool is from there, the wool that we lined the entire build is from there, and then the upholstery fabric is from there as well. Over here, we've got a window. This was another big decision we were trying to decide between. Do we go with another gull wing? We already had a gull wing, tried and tested, and we loved it. But we really wanted it to feel more like a camper in here rather than like expedition-y, even though obviously on the outside it's more of like an expedition rig. So we ended up going with a Dometic S4 window. We heard really good things about them, but it is an acrylic window, so there's some debate on the internet about if it's good for this type of travel or not, but for us it's been perfect. We ended up getting it tinted, and the best thing about this and the reason that we went with it is unlike a gull wing, you can actually open this and close this from the inside, and then it has built-in bug screens and a built-in blackout curtain, which is pretty cool if you ask me. On to cabinetry. This was an area that we really had to think about because in such a small footprint like a Defender, every inch and every millimeter counts. So we were trying to maximize, okay, how could we fit all of our gear and stuff into an area and a space that's this small, but not make it feel cluttered. Around the entire edge, we have little cupboards. This one, for example, is our workout equipment, which is so nice to have close and down here. In this one, we've got our mats that we use for our window covers for night. This one is our shoe cubby, which was a big, almost must-have for the cabinetry side because on all of our previous trips, every time you come into the car, you take your shoes off to climb into the back, and then it immediately looks like a mess because there's shoes everywhere, especially if you're changing them a couple different times depending on the terrain. So super nice to have easy access. This is more of the shoes that we use on a day-to-day basis, and then we have another cubby down here that's like going out shoes. On to the kitchen side of things. So our top cupboard is devoted to our pantry, and you can also gain access to it from the outside. And then drawers. We have 2 drawers in the whole entire build, and because this is about 50 centimeters wide, it's made it to where we actually can get access to everything inside of here without feeling like we're just shoving stuff in, which has been so nice. So both of these originally were gonna be for kitchen stuff, but I've commandeered one since then. So the bottom one is like pots and pans and cups and all of that, and then the top one is all of my camera equipment, laptop, drone, all of the good stuff. So rather than carrying a Pelican case around, now I have one place I can just pop everything in. And then the last cubby that we have down here is more of like toiletries and stuff up top, and then down below it's really meant for outside access, but we thought what the heck, you might as well have access to it from the inside as well. So it's got like our little Osprey toiletry bags and stuff like that. So on this side, we've got a built-in fridge. We've been using Dometic for the last 4 or 5 years. When we left for our trip in 2018, we switched from a cooler to a fridge, and there's no going back. If you've made that transition, you know all about it. I don't need to explain it. But if you haven't yet, going to a fridge then allows you to no longer be searching for ice. It keeps your food nonstop cold, all of that good stuff. So we've had a fridge for the last three years. We've been absolutely loving it. This is the CFX 55, so it's a 55-liter fridge, and it actually has an ice maker as well, which is pretty cool. And I love that it's built in. It makes it feel a little bit more like a home. Moving on, so this is our little pop-up table. Super convenient for working, or even if I'm standing up here and cooking, or Andy's standing up here and cooking. It's nice to have some more countertop space. Obviously, even though we have quite a bit of countertop space, every little bit extra helps. So this has been a super handy thing. We've got one more table. This is a slide out table, and the good thing about it is this table and this table are the same height. So if Andy and I are inside and we're eating back here, or we're both working on something or whatever the case may be, we each have our own table, so we don't feel like we're crammed inside of a tiny space, both trying to eat off of one thing, which has been really nice to have. And obviously this has the added benefit, if you just need to put your coffee cup or whatever, you can just pull it out a little bit. Down in this corner, this just pulls off really easily, and then my prized possession that I really wanted on this trip and that I have not used one single time is the toilet. When I first started thinking about this build, it was like a non-negotiable. I wanted a toilet so bad. I thought I would use it all the time if we were in a sketchy area or whatever. It has not been used once, and we will probably be getting rid of it before too long and maximizing or utilizing this space for something different. But for now, that's the home for the toilet. We've also got this little cubby. Right now it just has a blanket in it, but it also has the control panel. So this is where you could turn like a kill switch for the refrigerator, the water pump, and the UV filter, which all of that lives underneath here. This is where our battery setup is, and where our water filtration is, and where our water pump is as well. So all of that is tucked away nice and tightly down there. Oh, okay, I see where you keep your towels and food, but where do you keep your clothes? So when we were thinking through this build, that was kind of the compromise that I was talking about earlier of, we could either build this bench seat higher and have space for our clothes, or we could build it lower and have the ability to sit down when the roof is popped down. And we obviously went with the lower option, which means we needed to go old school route, tried and tested for our clothes. So we just have two 90-liter duffel bags from Osprey. And our rule of thumb is, if you can fit it in the bag, other than shoes, you can bring it. If you can't fit it in the bag, it's got to stay home. So it's probably not fair because Andy's clothes are bigger than mine. Someone pointed out recently, which is very true. But all that aside, this just helps us to kind of minimize how much stuff and clothes that we bring on the trip. And it's pretty simple, as you guys can see. Whenever we get parked up, we just throw it into the front seat. Let's move up to the top. We've got a sink, a Dometic sink, and a Dometic tap, and we have a 7 liter per minute pump, and this is filtered water as well. So where our shower down there is not filtered water, there's a T-piece that breaks off, and the water that goes here is filtered through a Guzzle H2O Stealth system, which is their built-in system, which allows us to actually drink this, which is amazing. And it's the first time we've ever had running water on a trip, so it's pretty cool in that regard as well. And then moving over to the induction side of things, unlike our previous setups where we had to go find propane and country to country and change the adapters and change gas tanks and all of that, we are now on one fuel source. So we have diesel for the diesel heater and for obviously driving, and then solar and electric for everything else. We have 240 amp hours of a lithium battery bank from Buettner Electric, which is a Dometic company. And then we have 420 watts of solar on the roof, which is probably more than we need, but it's been incredible because we're just staying at 100%. So we're basically making our own energy on a day-to-day basis and can stay off grid a little bit longer, which is super cool. And because we have the Dometic inverter, we can just easily punch the inverter on from inside and start cooking. Now that we're talking about induction, I think it's important to talk a little bit more in detail about our battery setup, because induction wouldn't be possible without it. So we have 420 watts of solar on the roof. We have 2 batteries. They're each 120 amp hours, making up our 240 amp hour battery bank. And then we have a 90 amp hour charger. So we could probably stay 3 to 4 days easily using the induction hob every single second that we wanted, but we would be recharging with the solar. Now, if we got to a point where we were like, okay, we don't have enough solar coming in for whatever reason, we're down to 40%, maybe it's a rainy day, we could just start the car or drive, and after an hour or 2 on the road, we'd be back at 100% with that 90 amp hour charger, because that means for every hour that you're driving, 90 amps is coming back in, which is pretty awesome. So We will never run out of power with this setup. On the back over here, we've got our battery control panel, which we're able to see our solar that's coming in on this over here. We've got this little panel here that we can see what we're at, the total amp hours that we have left, the percentage that we have in our battery bank, and how many amps are either coming in or going out. We also have our inverter, which we have a 2000 watt inverter, and when we first were looking into induction, we thought we were going to have to get a 3000 watt inverter, which was a little too big for our space that we were working with. It could be possible to fit it, but with our build specs, we were really trying to stay at the 2000 watt side. And we managed to do that by sticking with a single burner 1500 watt induction hob. So you obviously can go up from there, but yeah, for what we were looking for, this kind of worked out perfect, and it allowed us to have a portable hob so we can cook outside, because we really didn't want to sacrifice the essence of camping, which is to be outdoors, for solely cooking inside. This was really supposed to be more of a backup option. So having a portable induction hob has allowed us to be able to cook on the back door or outside. We have a plug over there and on the back as well. And then only other thing I want to talk about up here is obviously we have charging ports, which is really nice. The inverter needs to be on. And then we have our Webasto diesel heater, which we finally got a diesel heater after years and years of wanting one, and then the Arctic trip without one. We finally decided it was time to pull the plug on that, and we have one now. So cold weather, we are no longer scared of you. I'm excited. The last piece of the camper van conversion is, where do we sleep on a day-to-day basis? So we obviously have the pull-out option that I showed you guys earlier, but on a day-to-day basis, Andy and I actually sleep upstairs. The AluCab Icarus not only gives way to really great headroom, but it also has a built-in bed. Simple as that to pull it down. All of our bedding and stuff stays up here, and with the bug screens and the windows, we've woken up to some pretty epic views. Even this morning is pretty cool. Down here is just the little hatch. I'll just fold that down real quick so you guys can see. So all in all, this is probably like 9 feet of bed space up here, longer than any human. So if you're tall, don't worry about it. Andy's 6'3" and has plenty of head space. We usually sleep with our heads at that end, because as you can see, this is a little short down here, but yeah, it's been pretty awesome. It even has like built-in lights and stuff for reading, and then built-in light up here, which I should probably mention that whenever we were doing the build, we thought we were going to have to add in additional lighting, but with the Icarus conversion and all of the built-in lights, both up here and down below, we actually haven't added in any additional lighting to the camper van conversion, which is pretty cool.
So let me take you through a few upgrades that we've done up front. I'll start with, I think this is probably my favourite upgrade on a Defender. It could be a little bit bougie, but I fitted cruise control. So we're more of a touring vehicle than a strict off-roader, and I absolutely love just sitting it to 55 or some crazy speed limit like that in this Defender. A simple upgrade that we got from our friend Nick in Australia is he sent these leather straps out, and I think MH liked it just because it looks cool. But for me, before, the genuine Land Rover one is just like a plastic thing that digs into your leg. So now that it's just leather, you can see it just gives you that little bit more. This is a must-have. It's a mud stuff armrest. When you're not using it, you just push it forward, and then when you want to cruise down Route 66 or wherever you're going, there you go. Job's a good one. A lot of the cockpits actually, it's probably 90% mud stuff upgrades, because they just seem to have the solution for all these stupid things that Land Rover do. So some upgrades from mud stuff are all the cowl switches. So that's got like your spotlights, your working lights. It's also got the air compressor. It's an ARB air compressor, which is under the driver's seat. We've got the RAM mount phone holder. A big upgrade is going from a single din to a double din. All this fascia you can get from mud stuff, which another neat feature is these actually move compared to the genuine Land Rover ones don't, which is annoying. This also has a rear view camera, so it helps when you're backing up. We got rid of the rear view mirror because it hangs down low, and we've put the dash cam there, which is front facing, but it's also rear facing. So we just leave it on rear and we just use that like it's our rear view mirror. A standard feature, we actually have heated seats, which is a nice luxury, and a heated windscreen. We've got standard air conditioning, which is an absolute dream. I know a lot of you Defender owners don't have air conditioning. Under here is where the Webasto diesel heater is mounted, and that's also a Mudstuff product. So the one and only Mary Hannah upgraded the cubby box by cutting a square out of our mattress and then putting some fake leather stuff over the top. Before, it was just like a bit of toilet paper, I think, on a bit of wood, and it just gives you a horrible elbow ache. So now we're living the dream with this memory foam, and we're living the luxury life because we upgraded from rubber to carpets and then capped it off with these bison corner pieces, and that's what we're talking about. So that's the ARB outlet for the air compressor. This is also from Mudstuff, so it tells us our voltage, and then we've got some USB outlets. We used to have the starter battery and the auxiliary battery, but now those two batteries that are under the passenger seat, they've just been linked to make a more powerful starter battery, and then we just added another USB in. This is another thing that you've got to have in a Defender. There's no glove box in a standard Defender, so I'm not sure who makes this, but basically this were just plastic. You take that off and then you add this with the hinges, and it gives you a nice little cubby box. One more thing I just remembered. I don't know why in Land Rover's wisdom they decided, so to heat your feet, they just had a bit that like comes out and hits the side of your leg, but Mudstuff make this heat deflector so that it at least points down towards your feet. A few mechanical upgrades for Tango. Just, it's not that we've been wanting to get more power out of him, it's just we want reliability and for him to be a bit more robust compared to the stock vehicle. We've added an Alisport intercooler, which is double the size of the standard intercooler, which should help him run more efficient in these hot countries and on these long uphills in the mountains and what have you. At the same time, we changed the hoses for silicone hoses on the intercooler, and all the other coolant hoses have been changed. The engines, actually, my brother, who's worked for Cummins for God knows how long, he's rebuilt this engine for us, so hopefully it'll take care of us. We did change the standard airbox for a Nugget stuff. It's like an Australian brand, so that's a sealed air intake. There's a few issues with it. It's not quite as nice fitting as what I was hoping, especially considering the extortionate price. And another thing that we've noticed on the road, after being on the road a few months, is on the internet it says, oh, we've used a Nissan air filter which you can get all around the world, but it turns out the part number matches the air filters, but none of them seem to quite fit apart from the one that's in Australia, which is obviously going to be annoying to get when we're not in Australia. Anyway, I'm sure we'll resolve that. We changed the coolant reservoir from a plastic one to an Alisport aluminium one, and the lines that go from there, they used to have that old brittle plastic, so we changed that for flexible hose. This is the Puma 2.4 TDCI, and I wouldn't leave your driveway on a trip unless you change the output shaft to an LOF one-piece one. That failed on our standard. The standard one failed for us in the Arctic, which ended the trip unfortunately, but I would change that to the LOF one. We've changed prop shafts for Gwyn Lewis, heavy duty prop shafts. The rear half shafts, they're LOF one piece. So on the, if you know Defenders, where the flange meets the half shaft, you get a lot of play there in the teeth. So having one piece should hopefully eliminate that. We've polybushed the vehicle throughout, and that has totally stiffened up the vehicle in a good way. Your standard bushes below your shock absorbers, they must be made of peanut butter on the standard ones, because you just seem to go through them all the time, especially considering the weight of the vehicle. But on the poly bushes, they're holding up perfect, and I think we've done like over 12,000 miles on them now on rough stuff. We got rid of the EGR and the cat, so it's just got a straight pipe instead of the catalytic converter. When you do get rid of the EGR on these Puma engines, you have to get it programmed. We got that programmed by a company in England called Bell Auto Services, and you also get like a little dongle, so you plug that in and then he does all the work. You don't have to go into the shop, and then that'll delete the EGR. But it also, you can use that to plug into your OBD2 sensor, and it'll give you some live values. So when you're on the road and you're running up in high altitude and all this, if there's anything that's on your mind, like coolant temperature, cylinder head temperature, all those good things, or any error codes. It can read your error codes, so that's nice to have because it's only like this big. So here's a little breakdown for you guys who want to know more about the water filtration system. This is the front runner box that we keep on the roof rack. Inside we've got a portable guzzle H2O, and that comes with 2 hoses. You've got an inlet and an outlet. So on your inlet you've got a pre-filter. Make sure you use that because we made the mistake of not using it and we blocked our filter that's in here. So that'll plug in, it's got a push fit, it'll plug into that side, and then the outlet will just have a push fit connection, and then you'll put that into the tank. This is rechargeable, so it's portable, so you don't need to have it plugged in. It's got a little lithium battery in it. Inside it's got basically everything that we've got inside. So we've got like a double filtration system really. It's got a UV filter and then the cartridge filter there, and the high flow pump. You'll pull up to a water source, drop that in the water, press the button, it'll pump it in. The job's a good one. If that's not long enough, it comes up with an extension hose too, and that's everything you need. So the plan for us is to try not to use any plastic bottles if we can help it. So that is a wrap on our little orange house walk around video. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you subscribe, and if you do, there might be some more videos in the future.
Maybe. But thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments and we'll do our best to answer. And until next time, thanks guys.